it seems like the bunch is pretty content to just roll along at this point. They're only going 30k an hour, albeit 2% uphill, but they're pretty in control.
Yeah, we actually do have a quick little replay of how the sprint did play out. We'll get to that in just a second. But yeah, I think what is happening here is that initial sprint has kind of put some of the riders like, okay, this is fairly intense at this point. My heart rate's raised up, and we have that little bit of a punch of a climb coming up pretty shortly. So because of that, I think they're all kind of looking at each other, waiting. Interesting arrow power up there actually coming from one of the Rave riders here, as you can see, in this Division 1A for the women. It's going to be Jacob there, actually. Well, perhaps another rider there coming from Rave, actually. Maybe Nash that just threw that down. Let's go ahead and take a quick look, though. Here's what happened just a moment ago in the first sprint points and how things actually played out there as they came out of the Essies through that little bit of a downhill.
We've seen Emily Watts the last couple of weeks has been the big player up the front. Dana Davidson has also, gee, they left it late, didn't they? A few drop power-ups, but to only be sprinting kind of midway through that bridge is typically a bit late. Emily Watts, big Watts, ahead of Clara Nash, it looks like. Oh, but this is coming close down to the line. Watts will take it. Clara Nash, Lisa Jacob in third. These are all really familiar names in the sprint territory. So I'm not surprised by that, but with so many laps and so many sprints on each lap, certainly going to be a case where they need to leave a little bit left in the tank for those later sprints.
Yeah, no, they are about to hit. They are about to hit their climb here in just a moment here. But I wanted to jump on over to the men's races. They're just getting going out on course, hitting the Essies for the first time. Just wanted to make sure we catch that sprint, and it does look like solid pack of riders here. We'll take a look at how things are standing as far as the current rankings after these first couple of sprint points. But man, this course, it's going to be consistent here. I think the only time that we're going to get is the in between the climb over toward the Watopia reverse, followed up by that downhill section. Perhaps through there we'll get a couple of moments. Here's one of those kicks we've seen over and over again. Ross here going from arrow. A lot of times, if you're not a full-on sprinter, if you don't get that 15 to 18 a lot of times that you really need at these top ends lately, these riders will try and get away early and kind of roll through the line because they get left to go. It does look like Motto here on the chase, and we've seen this work a couple of times this morning. It looks like they're taking a risk. It is a little bit of dice rolls. They come on really quickly with that pack, though, Kate.
Well, this is the kind of sprint where you can actually hit really high peak powers. It's one of the ones I do if I'm trying to break any power records, because you can get that speed down the bottom, which builds into so much momentum to then accelerate from. In saying that, you can run out of juice very quickly because the bridge is longer.
I don't know if
Matt Ross took it easy, but that was a bit tight for second.
That was tight. That was really tight. Let's see if I can find another look at that, because that was, I mean, right to the line. I think they held on, but obviously here with that breakaway situation, it does look like Ross easily taking that down. But Amato here with 10 watts per kilogram, they had a solid 15 or so behind, trying to shut this down for these points for the first time across the line.
Yeah, well, they came pretty quick from behind. Ross looked like he was doing it easy, but the second, let's see what happens.
Get the speed.
Here.
That speed almost looks like it's regular motion with how fast they're coming. He does just nip it looks like, though, from this camera angle.
But Costa was absolutely flying. Left it a bit late, perhaps, to come by with that much speed. Oh, but it was a good... I originally thought that Matt Ross didn't have to put out too much energy to do that because he made that initial break. But actually, his watts were through the roof, just trying to keep away. And we have to remember that there is loaded points for the FTS segment as well. So early on in the race is where a lot of people will be going up all those loaded points. And then that's why the back end is always so interesting, because people can burn a few too many matches in these early ones.
Yeah, I mean, these, and that is part of the team game, though, isn't it, Kay? I think with the reality of having so many riders that can play throughout the duration of the race, I think some of the riders are out here just I mean, I've seen Amato off the back a lot of times, hasn't he? Where he'll throw down early on, and then later in the race he'll be like, well, he'll actually say it in game two. He'll be like, I'm done. It's over. I'm going to go out the back now at this point. So, you know, I think that some of the riders out here, especially what we saw again in the women's race earlier with Team Heino, they kind of waited to the back end of the race for like 3 or 4 of the racers to try and take those final top 10 spots. And they didn't really play much for the points early on. They put a lot of chips in that basket. It didn't really end up working out for them, but maybe some of the teams playing that toward that direction rather than taking these early splits, while other teams, like we just saw with Arrow, as well as Amato there riding for that TCP team, taking some stuff early on here. Maybe just more of the sprinters.
Well, interestingly, I reckon, I'm prepared to put it on the table, Nathan, as I do. That's why you have me here, I think. I think that, especially in this women's field, a couple of these names for the Aussies will be up for World Championship selection.
Really?
Because there are not a lot of Australian riders in the Premier League, and there are quite a number of spots for each country at the World Championships. They do have at least 10 riders allocated. The UCI will then add any additional pros who are on ZWIFT to apply as a wild card to make sure that they do have a really high quality. Oh, look at all these feathers being dropped. This is definitely the pace is on if that many power-ups have been dropped all at once. This is the steep part though, but I always think if you can muscle through without using that feather power-up, it comes in very, very handy just as you're cresting over the top to save yourself, to save your legs a little bit. Torben Padridge Madsen, he is so consistent. I reckon he should put his hand up to potentially be included in the world squad, because Nathan, we've got Oceanas coming up, Esport Oceanas, that a lot of these guys, the Aussies and Kiwis, will be looking at to get involved in, and the top 5 riders from that automatically qualify for the World Championship. So it's actually a really interesting part in the season where a lot of riders are probably trying out some new tactics, as well as maybe racing in a way that tactically isn't perfect, but is very good for their form and their power numbers and their precision. So it's all a little bit interesting.
Definitely super interesting with this time of year, watching as people come up on through. It's so different now with these announcements. We'll go through these league standings in just a moment. The women are heading back over to the SEs. Not too much of a break at this point. We can see that A. Chubb, though, off the back. Sam Hill hanging on just fine. Back in with the women's racing here real quick, though, as they are just about to hit their second sprint. But as we do watch these riders, you know, through these sections and how they're able to show off the talent that they do have throughout this season 1 of the Zwift Racing League for the 21-22 year, they're definitely, you know, in the back of their minds, if they are going for that world spot, is, am I showing enough in this season? Because, you know, there's this, and then the qualifications as well that they're going to do, and then from there, it's whether or not they can get selected. That is one way, is selection. So if you show off enough throughout these, and then there's the actual qualifiers with the top 5 going through. So there's building form and practicing to here as well. So if we do get into some courses like this course, you know, it is a little bit of sprinters with it coming at you a little bit more. It's not quite a Knickerbocker as we see Davidson actually. Did Davidson just roll Watts? Did that just happen?
He did. Yes. Now here's a fun story for you, Nathan. The Rave team in slightly lower leagues is a rider by the name of Michelle Ferris, and if you don't know her, you should. She's an Olympic silver medalist on the track in the track sprint. She started Rave, and she rode with us this morning in our Zwift bunch, the chicks who ride bikes, and she got asked how she came up with the name for the team, and she said it's a typo because she does like that kind of music, and every time she tried to type race in, it auto-corrected to Rave, and here we have Rave. So,
that's so great. That's actually one of the best stories of all time. Like, Davidson over the top with Team Rave here. The typo team. I'm just going to call them Team Typo.
Well, and it makes sense to me. So Michelle was also talking, we were talking back and forth with the bunch a little bit about power-ups and sprinting on Zwift, because she's such a good sprinter. And it doesn't surprise me that a lot of the riders in that squad we're really noticeably seeing an improvement in their sprinting. And it's not just raw powers. It's all like Michelle was talking about timing of sprinting, where you sprint, how you sprint. And they've put a lot of thought into the strategy of a sprint. She's also got literally world-class, trailblazing experience in it. So that helps. But we are really noticing it. And Dana Davidson rolling over the top of Emily Watts without quite the same punch that Emily has is a perfect example of how to sprint really tactically.
Yeah, perfect timing on the momentum there coming from them. And I actually have to confirm that as far as Team Wave goes, there may have been some drafting, picking up of riders, throughout the off season, going through the summer and or your winter into this Zwift Racing League here season. But I think at the same time, I have seen a named obvious improvement of the riders' riding ability as well. So that's really cool to see how a team can pick up some riders and advance them through the sport. One of the coolest things actually in Zwift Racing is having that very similarity to the in real life cycling, where you see somebody coming on through. Well, let's go ahead and chat about Tabalong here for a second before we get into juniors and new riders advancing through sport here. But Costa now was not quite able to grab that third place over the line. He's not going to get caught out nearly as badly this time, it looks like, as Tabalong here tries to hold on. But no innovation, though, with the Alien Battlers. Gets the jump at 13 watts per kilogram, and he catches them all out, actually. It looks like it's going to be Ross and Ruth. Costa actually sets up for fourth there instead.
Yeah, Richard Law, I've been watching him progress through this season as well. And he's all good on the timing too. I think he's spent a bit of time with maybe Anna's whiteboard, kind of going over things, because it's been quite noticeable how he's done it. I'm so impressed by that. Like, I think that raw numbers are one thing, and it's something that you cannot hide from at all. And it's always the debate that people have about, should the Tour de France riders release their power numbers? Will that give away some of their advantage? And I think Zwift completely debunks that, because you can see everyone's numbers, but it doesn't mean that people know how to use it. There's so much strategy behind it. It's so much richer than just pure power numbers.
Yeah, I totally agree with. I've always kind of been on that same page as far as that goes when it comes to the releasing of data. Like, look, there's work that needs to be done. Yeah, I remember the first time I heard that. Well, if you know the number, then you just know what you need to win. And I was like, I think it's a little more complicated than that. a little bit more work might need to go into this than, you just know the number. And it's like, and then I'd always be like, don't you just want to make the number as high as you possibly can? Like, isn't your goal here just to get as fast as you can and not worry about whatever that number might be? But anyways, that definitely is a point to make as far as Zwift Racing goes, where you can see it's all the data is right there in front of you, and it hasn't changed anything as far as the way that somebody's going to be racing goes. It's more about the tactic, the style, and knowing when to use that power well.
Yeah, how and when to use that power. Mark O'Brien, good to see him hanging out in the middle there. It's probably the first week we haven't seen him by this point in the race launch a number of attacks by now. Maybe he's missing his climb, but I feel like we will see him jump out on that little pinch at some point. Otherwise, this wouldn't be Mark O'Brien.
I think it's a counterattack. Kate, I think it's going to be, counter the sprint, as we were talking about earlier, perhaps before the bridge here, rather than, because a lot of times they wait until this punch, and it's just not quite enough distance to really put too much hurt on that 1% to 2% difference between really the elites of the elites here.
No, and these teams are starting to just think differently also, just about how they can get as many points as they need to get, even if it means sacrificing a few riders earlier on, or getting some to just sit in and sit quiet for that early part. But you're right, this hill is a pinch for sure. You hurts for sure, but we can see all those power-ups get dropped en masse, and they just suffer over this little car.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem at this point in the race to be really too much of an aggression point.
Yeah, it does seem to be your buddy O'Brien, though, that's giving it a go this time, actually. O'Brien Gallagher, right on cue.
There's my boy.
And gives it a go, may have heard you. And it's like, I'll show you, Kate. I'm going to go off the front. Now, this next section, though, it's one of the steepest parts of the entirety of Watopia. I mean, and so because of that, if the group has anything more than 5 riders, it's just going to become such an avalanche. And that's what I was saying, to really get the gap you'd need to make any rhyme or reason out of an attack through there, you kind of have to go a little bit earlier than that. Or become really, really relentless and just kind of punch off the front over and over again, so everybody's heart rates essentially just go through the roof if you do have that kind of fitness in you to put everybody in the red.
Well, you've got to be careful when you're going into the red this early in the race. So we've got 30k left. 43k is a decent distance on Zwift because the intensity is just so high the whole time. And sometimes a 10-second effort or just chasing without having that time to get the recovery can end up a very big problem. What do you reckon about all the bikes, Nathan? A lot of Trons out there tonight.
We actually have a ton of comments coming through over on YouTube about that. And interesting to see. Maybe Anna's comments. I mean, we really do need the whiteboard presence here today. Because we would get so much commentary, I think, coming in about what's happening with the Tron bike. And, you know, there's this resurgence of the Tron, it seems. From my experience, early on, it was a lot of the S5s, the 2020 S5s coming through. We do have a little bit of attack actually up the front here. It's going to be Ogino. Cutler's going as well. So this is a well-timed planned attack, it looks like here. Still 43K is your state, so we got about a little under 30K to go. 2 Tron bikes. And on the bike selection, you know, I've been really anti-Tron as well for a while. Maybe I had some sort of subconscious similar thing to Anna of just seeing it so often everywhere all the time. But now I'm kind of like coming back to this all-arounder maybe on this course, that this course does have that punchy climb in it. You know, perhaps even through the SEs, there's a little bit of ups and downs. But at the same time, the S5 2020, it just rolls so smoothly. And because of the nature of the sprint here, I just would not want to be coming to a bunch sprint because it's so tactical. You have that insanely fast downhill. The timing from the downhill momentum to when you'll open up your sprint is so short, and so much can take place with so many people kind of being really unpredictable through that section that it might not set you up very well, and the timing is just really, really difficult. So I'd want to break away, so I'd jump on that 2020 S5, and even in a high-rolling sprint, I think it's a good accelerator, so that's my choice as far as that goes. I'd have to say no Tron today, so I'm really actually a little surprised. So many Tron bikes. Maybe they just like to taste the rainbow. I'm not sure.
Indeed, Skittles fans. I think that it's certainly sometimes a little bit overwhelming for bike choice. Now, you might think that's silly given you know so much about all of the different bikes and find it very easy to digest all the information about, you know, that sort of technology. But I think for a lot of IRL riders, they are very used to not even having to think about any of that sort of stuff. So some people really embrace it, but there's others who I am guessing put a bike on and just don't even think, you know, again about it at all.
It looks cool.
And that's why the Tron.
I earned this bike.
Yeah.
I've climbed whatever. Like, seriously, there's something to be said about that, right? Like, I climbed 50,000 meters in game. I am using this bike. I don't care what Anna says. I don't care what whiteboard, chalkboard, your Volkswagen, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm using the Tron bike because I climbed 50K meters.
Well, and it's not a crap bike. So it's not that it's a horrendous choice. It's just that, you know, there may be more suitable ones on different courses, unless you're talking to Anna and she would never agree with that.
A little bit of attack off the front here. Again, Jordan Lewis here. Zed's son giving it a go. Trying to get this next segment points here. 16.4 kilometers in, solid 183 beats per minute. Not sure this one's going to stick, though. It's only a 1 second gap. A lot of times when they're within this 20 meters or so, that's enough to roll over with the speed. At 5.9, he's not even into a super tuck. A lot of times you really got to rest up for the super tuck at this point. If you don't see them coming through at 63-ish at that point, it's said and done, I think. As you can see here, Gallagher's going to come on with the lead out. 15 watts per kilogram from Torben. Solid. He got the jump. He is gone.
That is very, very good timing. I mean, he's hitting high watts. I think I saw him go into 14, but there's a lot in the chasing that were nudging up to 15, 16 watts per kg. So he didn't have the highest number. It was all about timing there. I reckon you'd have to be pretty brave to find time to duck into the super tuck heading into that. Like, I think when you're preparing for a sprint, your legs do not need to be still. They need to be ticking over. And I'd be quite concerned about anybody jumping into the super tuck about what happens. We're going to
do a guest. We're going to do a guest podcast with just me and you testing that theory on Zwift.
Yeah.
where I'm going from like standstill and nothing, because I'm the opposite on Zwift. I'm a BMX racer by heart though. Early days. Mm-hmm. So I like the standstill. Boom, like go real quick, and I could always get the jump. Like if there was $100 at the top of the hill. There was like one guy who might be able to beat me at it a lot of times. So I like those quick jumps from the start line, whereas that probably comes from your background, like having that. And you like the wind-up sprint, I remember you saying, Kate, that you like that longer, drawn-out sprint.
Yeah, I don't have that just spot acceleration like, a BMXer or something will. So a longer, drawn-out sprint for sure suits me. But that's the other interesting thing to think about is it's the dynamic of who you're sprinting around as well that can really change the outcome of a sprint. So as we get deeper into this race, a different group of people will be up the front and pushing the pace there. So that might change a little bit. But once when we can take a look at the standings, let's do that because I'm really interested in the FTL for what's happened so far. Let's take a look at the women. Ooh. FTS, sorry, FAL. Got me mixing my categories there. Dana Davidson, fast through segment. See, that was such a perfectly timed sprint, that last one, wasn't it? And that just nudges her well ahead of most. Only 2 points in it with Emily Watts and Clara Nash. They're definitely, Watts and Nash are certainly the two that we knew would be prominent in a sprinting race. Dana Davidson has been on the up and up and up. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for the likes of Pettinen or Miranda Griffiths to get a break here. I mean, Lisa Jacob as well, because it's a smaller field. They have a lot more responsibility, not a lot of places to hide.
Yeah,
but they are giving it a nudge.
And with the points today, I mean, it is only going to be that sprint section and a final sprint across the line. So the only advantage, and there was actually a comment over on YouTube saying it's kind of interesting that they're giving a go here over the top of this climb. So these riders must be fairly committed. And with a smaller pack, it's going to pay off a lot more here for Aero to put Rave on the back foot. I'm really impressed with Rave this week, actually, because I think Aero have been trying to get rid of these riders and drop them. And they've been able to follow a lot more with this week. It looks like kind of maybe fitness coming on, getting more used to the game, well prepared this week to take on Aero. But there isn't any points over the top of this climb. This is just about having less riders at the finish line for the big points that do come for the scratch race finish.
This is definitely the first time we've seen Rave 2 in the top 3 rather than kind of 2 in the top 5. So they're doing a really good job this week. A much smaller group, much easier to control.
They actually have four riders have made it here, Kate.
4 up there, yeah. So there's 4 Aero and 4 Rave, which is definitely puts them in a better position than if this 4 get back on, and that makes 8 Aero and 4 Rave. So I can understand why Schneider pushed really hard over the top there. I think they've definitely won.
Yeah, Davidson went to the front too immediately, up in the 52 kilometers per hour. They're trying to keep the... Watts is off the back! Watts has not made this group, actually, so Rave is going to be extremely motivated. Griffiths actually goes to the front and slows down, interesting enough. So I think there's some infighting in that front group about whether or not they're going to work. Rave need to go into team time trial mode because this is a lot of points to take regardless. I mean, the sprint, the first across the line for the finish, I mean, that's all on the line here for these arrow chasers.
Yeah, this is a really big moment for Rave, and definitely it could be a turning point in the race. Now, this is the halfway mark. They'll go through with 3 laps to go, 3 laps completed. If they aren't successful in this moment, they certainly know that if they can back it off a little bit and they do come all back together, that will surely explode again. They now know the absolute pressure point on the course. Rave is getting organised. They are coming together and working pretty well. But Aero's not slowing it down, I would say. They're coming to the front, but they're not massively backing off the wads. So again, which arrows are riding for which
Look
team?
at who didn't make it, Kate. Pettinen?
Yeah, there's the
Butterworth, Playo, Watts. These are all very well-known names of this team. I mean, does this just get caught out? Like, what happened here?
Yeah, I mean, I think they probably got caught out. I think Emily Watts would find those climbs real pressure points after she does max sprint efforts. Because she's very sprint inclined, sometimes riders like her can actually go really deep in a sprint that is hard to then recover from in a way that non-sprinters can't really do. And I always used to find that with my sister. If we both did 10-second sprints, I would be on the ground vomiting and she would be like, I don't even feel like I had a workout. And it wasn't about who went faster.
Yeah.
It was
really? So it wasn't because you won. So you'd be vomiting and you didn't even win. Like,
I did win, but because I was a sprinter more than her. But it's more the underlying physiology of how hard.
I was just seeing who won the sister rivalry. That's all. I was just.
Well, she would outclimb me in a heartbeat. She's about 25 kilos lighter than I am on a race day, Nathan. So as soon as the road turned north, I would swear at her, and not always under my breath, I might add. But it has taught me that sometimes you can really, really hurt the sprinters when there are intermediate sprints involved. And whenever you have tours, for example, where they do have a sprinter's jersey, it's often a surefire way to get some sprinters kind of damaged is to get other teammates to push them for those sprint points and make them go really deep while saving your own sprinter. So a little bit of tactics in that, I reckon, for the Rave girls.
Yeah, definitely working out for them in their favor now, because in the weeks past, Arrow has completely dominated. Now it's a little bit more of head-to-head with a 4v4 off the front at this point, which is really great to see. We're going to have quite the race on our hands now. We do have some comments coming on through here, specifically about the course. And loving the comments coming through here from Peter Maxwell, as well as Fabian here, a couple of others, though, specifically talking about the addition of this course and not knowing about the cutoff section, actually, as this is the essentially it's Watopia reverse without the climb. You just take the climb out, and from there, you had the initial little punch, but you don't go all the way to the top. And this was a part of a recent expansion to Watopia to create some new courses out there. So very cool climb. If you want to actually check out the rider recon for this, it is over on World of ZWIFT, and ZWIFT Insider does have all the information about this specific course as well that has been added. So it's kind of essentially just it's the punch in the face, and you don't have to do the drafting section of that reverse climb, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's a great course because little punchy climbs like that can do a lot of damage, but can also, the riders can suffer a bit too early on the power-up drops, I reckon. They could have used them a little bit earlier to accelerate a little bit faster. Lisa Jacob, Clara Nash.
Right to the line. Oh, Jacob, it looked like there.
I feel like I have to quantify my comment about the power-ups too. Because of how quick that run-in is, I think you can get the most benefit and acceleration using it about 25 seconds out or 20 seconds out, and getting a little bit more draft through that bit and being able to recover just have slightly fresher legs when it does come to the high speed section of the bridge. But it is, it's something that you can definitely play around with when you do have access to reconning a course. Preferably if you can find a bunch ride, though it's pretty hard to do on your own.
Yeah, this one, I'd have to agree with you 100% there, Kate, is that this section really is about how much speed you carry through. You got to time. I've gotten beaten so many times in this sprint, not timing it correctly, and not carrying all the speed I possibly could through the pack, because you are on a very steep downhill. It does get into, with the pack, 65 plus kilometers per hour, I would think. A lot of super tucks coming through that section, a lot of speed. Then the people are dropping arrows even on the downhills. So you time it a little bit too late, you're going to actually be slowing down more than you're going to be speeding up for the riders who carry things directly off of that launch pad, essentially, at the bottom of the Estes. Mark O'Brien's doing exactly what we predicted here, Kate. He's doing the counterattack, and there he goes, 7 watts per kilogram, looking for that gap. And on this course, I really think this is doable if it's timed right and it's on the right lap with the right amount of fatigue in the legs of the pack.
Well, Anna is not a fan of the backwards cap, which I think it looks very cool. Mark O'Brien kind of looks like a bit of a gangster rolling out there on the front. But he almost kind of psychologically tortures this field every week, doesn't he? He just attacks and attacks and attacks until they either give up and let him go, or they chase, but in doing so, end up then having a lot of guys kind of jettisoned out the back. So I respect this. And as we were talking about earlier, just because you know someone's numbers doesn't mean you can go with it. Just because you know someone's tactic doesn't mean that it's smart to then attach yourself to Mark O'Brien and think, oh, we know he's going to attack, we'll go with him. Certainly doesn't always work like that.
And being out to 6 seconds here, I mean, this now 7 seconds. He goes out to 10, and if he can at least match what they're going to bring to him, because look at them. They're all going to just be looking at each other. 46 kilometers per hour here. Now, speed still is king no matter what. 45, 44. O'Brien's traveling at 48 kilometers per hour. He's going to continue through these sections to gain a little bit of time on them. The question is, though, here is, what does he have? Because whenever I'm going to attack like this, I know I have to put into reserves to match or do better than those behind. And the only ones I want to come back to me are those who drop everybody else at a 10 or 11 watt per kilogram full sprint to get back to my wheel, and hopefully have enough of a gap that we end up riding away from anybody who weren't able to match that insanity amount of effort. And now, good to see O'Brien does have some orange numbers. That's what he's going to need if this is going to stick at all.
This is a brave move, and I think when you win like you did, like O'Brien did last week, in a lot of style and panache, he's got nothing to lose and nothing to prove. He is very consistent. He is able to hold a very steady speed up the climbs. It does, I would argue, suit him a lot more to be out the front and to be able to control that very consistent diesel kind of effort throughout. I think the bunch will probably get a little bit closer on this climb section, but often that means that they will sit up a bit over the top, and that will be absolutely advantage O'Brien. Every little gap we see opening up here, I think, is actually advantage O'Brien, because I can't see the bunch letting anybody jump across. They've
now the question is how
off.
much speed on the downhill. He's really got to jump here, get to 57 as quickly as he can. More than 6, O'Brien. Now, see, that's the mistake here, in my opinion, here. At 7%, he should already, as quickly as he could have been into super tuck range. He should be jumping into orange if he's got them. Now 65. He's going to get a little bit out of this. They said 13 seconds, though, here. And I think NZ Bro's a little bit scared with the way that they're punching off the front here to try and bring that speed as high as they can. That's what they need to do, because O'Brien, if he gets into rhythm with how much landscape he's got to work with the flat and then the Estes, I mean, those sections are not sections that they really tend to push anything because they're thinking about the next sprint. He could just kind of be let go while they think about points out here today.
Well, and again, you're mentioning the 57k an hour, getting that super tuck go, but for some of the guys, they're considering that, but they also, as I said to you earlier, they don't want to stop pedaling. If I kept super tucking in Zwift, my legs would feel like they had custard through them. Like, it would just be absolutely rubbish for me. And so I think when you are on a breakaway, sometimes you can only keep that consistent speed because you are just applying really consistent pressure. Now that gap has come down significantly. It's halved on that downhill, but it's still 7 seconds. So if these guys don't get organized and keep that speed really high, it will slowly drift out again.
50 kilometers per hour, 47. You can see the reality of a pack out on Zwift, and we'll see if they do slow or if they keep this speed. Now that's how long it took for the momentum of those avatars to even slow at all. That is, I mean, it really is advantage to the pack. But now is his opportunity. Now is when he really needs to think about, okay, they're doing 46, I'm doing 47. I need that 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers per hour extra where they look at each other and think about the SEs in the next sprint. Or perhaps, I mean, if I was a rider in that pack that's feeling good at this point and I didn't want a sprint situation, I'd throw down a 12 watt per kilogram, jump across, and work together with him. And maybe a couple more might come with me. But at that point, we may be able to split this pack apart as well.
Ooh, I'm a very big fan of the jump across, but it has to happen at a time that people take the foot off the accelerator, are not expecting it. If you do it when people are anticipating it, it is a waste of everybody's energy, and it often results in the break actually getting further out as that lack of coordination within the chase group comes together. O'Brien's holding that 7 seconds, but the bunch is not backing off. NZ Bro seem pretty motivated here. The problem is Aero is sneaking up toward the front. They're going to get in the midst of this chase. They are not going to put the hammer down and increase the pace. So they need to be really conscious of who is around them.
Gallagher giving him a bit of go, 6 watts per kilogram. He does have a 1 second gap at this point. You can see the meters at the bottom here, 11 meters. There is no draft on Gallagher at this point. And Phillip at the front at 2.1 watts per kilogram. If Gallagher does punch through here and carry momentum, the pack will carry a lot of momentum, but if he does just kind of punch over the top of each one of these, he may be able to come across to O'Brien. It is down to 6 seconds between these two. You do see Wallace there, NZ Bro, 12 watt per kilogram kick there real quickly. I think that NZ Bro is kind of motivated to say, no, we want this all back together. We don't want to just let that Aero rider get away. And I think they want the points to this next section, so I do believe they're trying to close this down before they hit the sprint.
Would be a good idea to close it down before they hit the sprint, because otherwise, even if he doesn't stay out there, the purpose of him being out there, given it is a points race, is already made. It's not about whether he actually is first over the line at the end, or whether he may take these points by 1 second or 15 seconds. They need to shut it down, and they need to shut it down very quickly. Gallagher is a weapon. I don't think he will be the one to shut it down. But he's certainly somebody that is enviable to have in a chase crew. But it doesn't seem to me like there's any other teams that are en masse coming to the front. We've got a couple from NZ Bro with Ruth and Wallace, and then a few others are popping up. But there's no team really taking responsibility for it. And I suppose there's a little bit of strength in numbers. When they're a really organised team, they've already scenario planned this kind of thing. I would say, Nathan, there's probably a few teams who come in with a bit more of a scattergun approach. O'Brien will take these points. They are closing in very quickly, though, so I think this will be his last dance to get the points. But he got them. Partridge Madsen in second for Aero, and I think Matt Ross came across in third for Aero. That was, tactically, he kind of textbooked them on them a little bit.
All three of them. Aero just took that down. I mean, that was very well. And NZ Bro were forced to chase here and there. That you saw orange numbers from them, kind of left and right, trying to bring things back. And it happened. It brought back, but Aero just kind of sat in the wheels and were pulled right along to take down those points, rather than NZ Bro really getting much of anything out of it. Now a little bit of a counterattack over the top from a green jersey, it looks like there. Who is going to be on the attack? It looks like that is going to be Gallagher again, actually, from the HKL team. 4.7 here real quick. Now, in the women's race, though, real quick, we do have an attack off the front. And it is going to be Jacob here. She's built herself a 15-second gap at this point. It was an
Wow.
attack over the top of the last time they went through that climb, into that climbing section, and just kind of walked away with this one.
Now this is interesting. I mean, in the chase group, we've got 4 Rave riders and 2 Aeros. So this is where Rave have got to get a little bit coordinated. At least Schneider
Because
coming
Wood got
through to get
dropped.
those second points
Good
there.
point there. Yeah.
So yeah, Wood got dropped. So if Rave, they need to put 2 riders on the front, not 4, maybe 3, but definitely a number of people consistently on the front, and just increase the pace. Now, etiquette, normal etiquette, and look, we are in ZWIFT. Things are slightly different than traditional etiquette, I would say that. But normal etiquette would say that Aero would then just sit on and let them do their thing. If they are quick enough, they're quick enough, but, you know, it's pretty poor form to actually mess up or slow down a chase group of this size. That being
It's like
said,
Griffiths is doing
Rave,
it though.
yeah,
She went
that's
to the
what
front
she's doing.
2.5.
Oh.
Yep.
Heavens, Miranda. I think that Rave need to show that they are prepared to chase and taking responsibility. Otherwise, you know, they're just going to roll around, and Jacob is going to continue to ride away. 10 seconds. It's actually come down, so it's yo-yoing a little bit here, but you know, it's sacrifice 2, draw your other 2 with you, and they've still got the over-dominant number in there. They've still got 4 on 2 at the moment. They would have 4 on 3. They're not using their numbers very well, Nathan.
Need to get back to algebra here. Who's the X and the Y's here? I don't know my order of operations. It seems that Rave has forgotten them as well. Too much time in the dance club instead of school. Schneider going for the front. Houston, Davidson, it looks like are going to be the one. Oh, Nash is sitting in now, and Davidson, perhaps they're the ones going to be working. I'd have to agree with you, though. You know, especially when you have numbers like this, the motivation is really there. At least in my experience, it's like, okay, we've got the numbers. We should be encouraged. We got some matches to burn. We've got resources to work with here. And I'd be looking to at least match Jacob. But perhaps they have the plan of that they're going to shut this down on the climb. Maybe. I feel like they have the energy for it as well. I mean, well, Nashier's at 170. Davidson 158. I'm not sure on the max heart rates here. Houston at 175, 76. So maybe a couple of them suffering and they don't want to end up dropping them off. Maybe feeling like it's a risk and they're just going to pull Aero around. And if they have the feeling that these other Aero riders may be stronger riders than the 4 of them, they're concerned of burning some of those matches against, you know, and settling perhaps here.
Well, definitely. You know, it's so easy to sit back and talk about tactics and why aren't they doing this, isn't they? I mean, it's very theoretical, but very simply, and I've had it, you know, people commentating on me, and at the time, because on the track you can actually hear the commentator a lot of the time, right? So I've been in the middle of points races and I have been dying 1,000 deaths. And I can hear the commentator saying, I don't know why Bates isn't chasing. And I want to say, oh, because I'm about to die. That is why I cannot chase.
With a couple of expletives in there as well.
Yes, predominantly. So we can discuss this, but at the end of the day, if they are, you know, all out of juice, then they're doing a great
commentator.
job.
We are that commentator.
You know, yeah, we are that. I apologize, ladies.
I mean, I've been in a short track, and short tracks are hurricanes of pain. I mean, that's essentially where I have literally the best, most beloved mechanic I've ever had in my life screaming at me to go faster. And I turn to him and go, shut literally was just like, I cannot. So I feel bad even being that person right now when we're like, well, Jacob is riding away at 6.2 watts per kilogram. And Rave's like, yeah, guys, we're trying over here. Don't worry about us.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, you should see what's being said about us on their internal chat right now, Nathan. You know, it's something else that was brought up on our ride this morning, actually. For a lot of people in especially Sydney and Melbourne that are just coming out of lockdowns, there was this real general sense that coming out of lockdown meant everything would be a little bit easier. And actually, quite contrary, a lot of people are finding life this week a little bit more overwhelming, because all of a sudden you've got school drop-offs, pickups, you're back in the office, a lot more time poor than, even though homeschooling is not a whole lot of fun, or even lockdown is not a whole lot of fun, there is more time for Zwift. There is more time that you cut out of that whole commute and that whole malarkey. So there was a real general sense of fatigue amongst the Sydney and Melbourne folk on our ride this morning, where, I honestly, I feel like everybody just needs a collective holiday.
Oh, yeah. I'm down with that. We'll take a holiday when
You're
the
with
season's
them.
over.
You're like,
I'm like,
oh,
here we go.
yeah, me too.
Well, when ZRL's over, I was thinking, okay, but now we got to talk about World Championships. So, and that was part of that's the next thing on the calendar, which I'm super excited about during the hiatus between. We'll see who's who amongst the Zwift Racing League. We'll see who's winning in the playoffs as well, right along that same time that those first qualifiers are going on. Talk about perfect timing for peaking, around your Zwift Racing season. We have Sayers up the front here. This is a nice last lap attack, and this is all in, right? Last lap attack. Yeah. You're not thinking about anything but sacrificing everything. He's not thinking about sprint points at this point, really. Well, maybe he wants the last sprint points across the line, but I mean, this is throw your chips all in and wait for the river card, really.
Well, like Cooper says, he's got a bit of pizzazz about his racing. I actually wondered when I saw his name earlier, I thought he's been pretty quiet. Well, they always prove me wrong when I say that. Maybe I should say it out loud more often. It tends to animate the race when it does. He's a really strong and solid rider. I don't doubt that he can hold a good pace and keep this going if the chasing bunch to faff around at all. O'Brien is in the mix in that, like, kind of getting in the middle of that chase opportunity there. Thankfully, though, some of the other teams appear to be motivated to try and get up, but that gap is, I would say, solid enough. This is not a good section to let gaps open up.
Yeah, if the rider knows how to really punch through the SEs, and there's one suggestion I would have: each and every single one of these little climbs going into the downhills, make sure you punch, reprieve a little bit on the downhills, punch again, make sure, just like in real life, carrying momentum and not wasting power through certain sections. Over the top here is really going to tell us the story, though. It looks like Innovation Alien with Richard Law, though, looking to come across interesting enough. Looks like he went early, perhaps enough. This is out to 23, 24. The chase is on, though, a little bit. They are fairly committed to it looks like here. And right on the wheel, up in the 57, 56, they're traveling fast. I think they may be caught, actually, before they even hit. Arrow power-ups everywhere. And Sayer's going to stay away 3 seconds. No way. Law may catch him. 50.
Oh, this is going to be tight.
I think Law's going to take this down.
Law. Yeah, that was a big acceleration there from him to fly on past Sayers.
Oh, Sayers just barely. I think he got it. I think he got it.
I think he got second. Although I think at that point he was soft pedaling. Perhaps
it didn't even matter to him
given
anymore
up the ghost a little bit.
Over.
Look, he's done. He's like, okay, I've got my points. I'm double clipping, and he just went down to 1 watts per kg. Oh, I think did he get it? He did. Oh, maybe not. Actually, let's watch that.
I think he got it. I think he got it.
Oh, that's
it's really close. He got it. I think he got it. He got it.
He got it.
We're like making sure. Oh.
Well, he's done now, though. He's pretty much double clipped after that effort.
What is double? What is
double clip? Like you pull both your feet out of the pedal. Like you're done. You just click both feet out. Yeah, foot no down. More pedaling.
Yeah, dabbing.
Foot down, is that what you call it?
Yeah, that's what we call it. I never just double clip when I'm sitting on the bike there outside. Like then I think of I'm in the Muppet Show, like I'm in the Muppets go to, is it that London where they're out riding the bikes and Kermit's double clipping? That's the only thing I think of there.
Do you often feel like you're in the Muppet Show, Nathan?
Just during this broadcast.
Perhaps that's something that we can talk about at another time. Mark O'Brien and Mick Gallagher are off the front now. Let's segue into that. This is a pretty good combo. So Mick Gallagher held a world record on the
See-
on the para side on the track in the individual pursuit. He is very, very difficult to beat in this kind of effort. He's just very good at sustained effort and keeping it going. He's a bit of a legend in the sport in Australia. So it's great to see him out racing here. And I think he and O'Brien will make very good journeymen together.
Hopefully they can hold on here, make things really interesting, at least coming right to the line with an exciting race. But it's only 5 seconds at this point. Going to be hard with a chasing pack with Wallace in the front. And ZWIFT has been very motivated today to shut everything down. HKL as well as Arrow have tried to make some moves here, but Frodo has been doing his work with this Ring of Power and getting a little bit of extra, it seems, to try and come across. And
well, they don't have far to go. This is, 42.8, so 43 kilometres. It's a long race, but most of the sprints have already been run. This will be now their biggest test. It's just getting over this last climb and the anticipation of not wanting to put too much in over the climb in order to save a bit for that back end sprint.
Off the front, and ZWIFT looking to shut things down. It's not a full-on attack. No orange numbers, but O'Brien trying to hold on. Nice little feather power up, and that is exactly what he needs at this point. Perhaps if Gallagher does have an arrow power up on the downhill section, it could have been assistance, but Gallagher unable to hold on, actually. Brian walking away here, 10 watts per kilogram. Behind, it's only 9 there from Innovation Alien with Richard Law here coming across the end. ZWIFT with Costa. Now, if they start to fade and O'Brien's able to hold on, if he gets out to 10 seconds, maybe, but he's got to hold on to a higher watts per kilogram than that if he's going to do so. ZWIFT looking to go across with Wallace. Saved the watts for exactly this moment. It looked like they're up in the 12 for just a moment. Lots of speed coming from this pack. I think it's all going to come back together, Kate.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that was a brave move, and O'Brien had to go as soon as Gallagher started dropping power. That was his only chance to do it. I don't think the gap's big enough. It's only 7 seconds back. Gallagher at 3 seconds. But this is the point where that downhill does really get a huge advantage.
7 seconds?
With a big chasing bunch. But remember a couple of weeks ago how tight it came down on the line, even with that downhill. Was it Makuri Island?
He's out of sight still.
And this is when 7 seconds isn't 7 seconds. It hasn't even closed half a second.
He's got to get up and go right now, though. 10 watts per kilogram. He's got it. Gallagher's committed as well. And ZWIFT, 13 here coming from Wallace, knowing that there is a serious situation up the road at this point. Sam Hill's actually going with Arrow as well now, carrying, though, the pack. Interesting enough, but I think he's just looking for... They're not on his wheel, actually, so he's just looking to upset the flow here at this point. O'Brien might be able to stay away, but it's going to come down so quickly. 7 watts per kilogram. Their speed is going to be probably 10 watts per kilogram higher. 63, now 64 here coming from Sam Hill. O'Brien is right around the corner here. He might still do it, Kate.
It's giving me heart palpitations. O'Brien has got to lift. This is where it is all or nothing, absolutely.
He's going to get caught right at the line. It's right there, Ross. Arrow power up. Oh, he gets rolled at the line. John comes through. Ross, Law. Oh, Brian, it was 200. It wasn't even 200 meters. It was like 50 meters. Oh, it's heartbreak for O'Brien. What a move for him.
It's funny. I don't see it as heartbreak because O'Brien won last week. And he put himself in absolutely the best position on a course that I wouldn't have thought he would necessarily think is a great course for him. I reckon highlighter over his name for the Oceanas and potential esports worlds team as well. Bearing in mind they're in the beginning of February, which is perfect for the Aussie summer.
Take a quick look at the replay of that heartbreak catch there. As O'Brien tries to hold on. The speed of the pack, though, up in that 65 kilometers per hour. Here comes Hill. Here comes Ross. 14, 15 watts per kilogram. Flying by 72 kilometer per hour sprint. And ZWIFT come over the top, though, with Sean. They're from ZWIFT Frodo. It's going to be Ross, followed up by Law from Innovation. Creo was there as well as White. Good to see Creel back out on the scene. Also has been participant in live esports events as well, way back in the day in London. And so Creel, long time racer. Jumping back over to the women's race there. Jacob off the front. Arrow representation. 40 seconds at this point. Just heads and tails above the rest today.
Yeah, they're not even attempting to chase at this point in time. They are comfortable that she's out the front, and Jacob will most certainly take this one away. I would normally say that this is where you've got it. You know, something could still happen when it's IRL racing. You're thinking she could still get a flat, fall off. All these kind of things could happen. You've got a little bit more certainty in Zwift than that. So I can comfortably say that I think Lisa Jacob is fairly unbeatable at this point. But Dana Davidson is still the one with all of those points on the overall.
Yeah, I mean, today Rave is definitely having an amazing day and upsetting the apple cart here a little bit for Arrow. And I think this is why Jacob had to go, perhaps. She kept on getting beat in these sprints. And it's so interesting to me today that you had mentioned that, Kate, that there is a top world-class level sprinter coaching these ladies through, and you're seeing it in these results now. I mean, Arrow have been really on the domination, and if we take a look here as the standings, it's 80 points straight up. They're kind of on the back foot now. They do have a lot of riders, though, in this top 10 still. Jacob here making sure that she does get first across the line pretty easily, and this is going to bring things back within, I think, striking distance or domination even for Arrow on the day. But Rave showing up on a sprinter's day and showing that they've still got a play to make in this season.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I think as we evolve further, we are going to get some more, experts in field into this area and coaching these teams, being part of strategy behind them and helping them build some experience. Certainly in that, we talked so much about the tactics and the tactical way. It's kind of not rocket science when it comes to Zwift, how you keep fit, stay fit, get stronger. But learning to race is a completely different thing. And you can make a whole lot of mistakes before you get it right. But look at this, Lisa Jacob. She doesn't even need to worry about tactics now. She's got absolute clear air behind her, and she will take this so comfortably. 40 seconds, which is a big win from her, and a very comfortable win. So good on her for that. I'm very interested to see how this plays out for Rave. They do have the number.
Looks like Arrow made a move because Davidson just came back. I think Arrow made a move. Interesting enough. Did they just roll right over the top here, Schneider? And Nash from Rave here coming with that feather power up. Looks like 10 watts per kilogram. If Rave get the better of them, 3 up at this point, that's going to be a pretty good makeup on the points loss there across the line. Will Schneider be able to hold off? It looks like M here from Arrow going to be able to get that 4th place. Ooh, it's right to the line, though. But it will be Davidson and Nash doing what they did on the day and taking down 2nd and 3rd place. So that'll be interesting for the points at the end of the day.
Well, Davidson, I think she proved today that she's got some very powerful legs on her at the moment. Clara Nash has just been fantastic the whole season. What I noticed there was that it looked like Schneider gave them a little bit of a lead out. So she did fly right past, and then that's when they dropped their power-ups and accelerated. That's great teamwork and great team sprinting for Schneider to do that for Davidson and Nash. Whether that was even necessary given how well they've been sprinting today, it doesn't even matter. It's fantastic to see them riding so well as a team and really developing in that way. So while the spoils of the day may go to Lisa Jacob, huge improvement from Rave, and I'm really looking forward to what they bring in the next couple of weeks.
As we are looking at riders cooling down, we're going to bring in our results here from the women's race here that just the men's race that just took place. We're going to take a look how things ended up playing out, as it is going to be at the top, Kenneth Chong. Oh, sorry about that, everybody. We actually need to change up how we're bringing the results in here in just a second. So we'll have to waffle on for just a second here, Kate, you and I. As we wait for these as we come on in here. I mean, we could talk about the Muppets a little bit more if we really.
Yeah, well, look, I've got my coloured pens out tonight. For the things I like and the things I don't like end up in pink, and the good things are in purple this week. But it is kind of cool actually to take notes and flip back over them toward the end of the season and see what in the early time kind of caught your attention along the way. We've talked about it already, but I'm loving, loving, loving what Rave are doing working on their sprinting. I think that that's a super positive thing. And I'm also really liking what's happening over in the men's side of things. Yes, Aero are continuing to have these tactics where they're really attacking and being pretty dominant in that fashion. But NZ Bro are biting back. Richard Law today was really tenacious, not only in the sprints, but in chasing back across. And it's taken a few weeks. And even if the points don't necessarily reflect it overall, I think we've got a pretty heated competition going on there.
Yeah, and Richard Law, definitely a really well-known, long-time Zwifter, and has come a long ways, actually, being able to battle it out the way that he is right now amongst this top-end crew. So good to see from him there. One thing that you brought up early on in the broadcast that I think we should really start speaking to and get a lot from chat as well, what they think is this idea of world championships coming up, the who's who. This is who's going to prove who's who in the APAC, as well as there is an Oceania before this, right? And then there's also, I think, this section of the world, though. I mean, this is really the who's who. Kenneth Chong, Matt Ross, Richard Law. They just took the top 3 in this race number 5 here. That says a lot to who they are as far as who needs to represent these countries when it comes to world championships in February.
So there's about 10 riders from each country that naturally get selected. On top of that, the UCI will allow people of higher profile to apply for wildcards and get wildcards. So they might be the pros who are on Zwift sporadically, but they know that they kind of have the goods to do it. They will be offered the chance in as well. But what's interesting is the only real rule around it generally from the UCI is that they have to be Cat A or above. So we might see a lot of the names that aren't in Prem League because that does depend on their ability to commit to that racing schedule. It also does depend on their contacts within the group. So I think that looking at the racing style, especially toward the end of last season, and we're seeing it again, there is huge talent in these leagues, these community leagues. I mean, what